For those of us who, has anybody ever left their TV on like a Saturday afternoon? You know that block of time that nothing ever good is on TV, I guess? There's like, how do I describe it? Infomercials galore. You know what I'm talking about? You guys know that block of time. It's infomercial time, okay? And often during this block of time, have you guys ever you probably have came across that commercial that to help animals in neglected and abusive situations. Okay, so I'm saying this. It's that commercial that is accompanied by Sarah McLachlan's "Sound of an Angel" song. Arms of an Angel, whatever it is, says, "The arms of," and you just watch it and you're crying because these puppies are looking at you and you're like, I want to adopt everything. And you just throw your money at the screen. I was going to show it to you guys, but I didn't want to produce that same response in you. Nikki hates it. Not from that standpoint she hates animals, but she hates the commercial. I guess the commercial is so bad, Sarah McLachlan can't watch her own commercial. It's that bad, okay? It's designed to do something. It is designed to move you with compassion, isn't it? You watch that commercial, your wallet's open. It doesn't matter if you're going into debt. You just throw your credit card at the screen, and suddenly you ended up with adopting 3 dogs and 4 cats and a guinea pig. And then you realize you probably brought them into an abusive situation because now you have no money, and they're going to go hungry because you have too many pets and stuff. And so, but that's the response. Your arms are, you have so much compassion. You just want to help. Well, Jesus faced the exact same choice during his ministry. Now, not to help animals, but to help men, women, and children who were neglected and alone and harassed like helpless animals. And today we will get to see how Jesus started a mission that was designed to rescue his lost sheep. So we're in Matthew chapter 9. We're in verse 35. Now some of you might be like, well, wait, you've skipped a few verses, and I have. So our community groups are starting here this week. And so I just want to remind you guys, in the back, is where the community group sheets are. That is actually going to study the passage that we skipped over. And so like I said at the beginning of the series, this is going to happen at times. We're going to skip over a few verses. And so I want to let you guys know, hey, check out those, pick up your community group sheets for this week. So we're in verse 35, and Matthew is changing gears here. He's already talked about this huge emphasis on his miracles and Jesus Christ's power and his deity, and it's sort of like the introduction to, boom, I am Jesus. All right, Matthew's done this. Now, the second part is actually starting to have a very specific focus on his disciples and those who are specifically following him and their impact and the mission. And so this next portion that Matthew covers is sort of on this, and that's where we find ourselves here today. So look at Matthew chapter 9, verse 35, and it says, "And Jesus went throughout all the cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues, and proclaiming the gospel of the kingdom, and healing every disease and every affliction. And when he saw the crowds, the Sarah McLachlan song started playing. And he had compassion for them." It's the easiest way to just illustrate that, okay? He saw the need because they were harassed and helpless like sheep without a shepherd. Then he said to his disciples, "The harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Therefore pray earnestly to the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into the harvest." How many of you guys have heard these verses preached before? Usually by a missionary, am I right? Okay. You've heard it like 1,000 times. Maybe even 1 billion. Because there's a small difference between 1,000 and 1 billion. When he saw the crowds, he had compassion. So our first point, what we're going to do is we're actually going to structure all of our points as one giant sentence, and you guys will see what I mean here. But see, he saw the need. Seeing the need. See, he saw the crowds. And as he's looking out in the crowds, he didn't see a bunch of smelly people. He didn't see a bunch of blondes, brunettes, redheads. He didn't see that. He saw something deeper. See, there wasn't a terrorist attack going on. They weren't being attacked by the Romans. He looked out and he sees something deeper that is going on, that they were harassed and helpless. And this crowd was functioning like sheep without a shepherd. Sheep are herd animals. They, when they lose their shepherd, they sort of do their best to stick together. But they don't really know where they're going. And so they're just sort of a blob, and they try to do. And when predators come, they just panic, and they're always trying to keep their eye on it. And they survive. They survived before shepherds were around, but shepherds help. Shepherds take care of them. They guide them to fresh water and grass and food and substance, and they provide protection. Sheep do not have a lot of protection against a pack of wolves. They don't. They are helpless. They are harassed. They are weak. And when Jesus looked out, he saw there was a problem. They had a need. So look at verse 38. And so he says, pray earnestly to the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into his harvest. And so he changes illustrations for us. He changes illustrations. So first, he identifies that the crowd is like sheep without a shepherd. And that's his diagnosis on the crowds. But then he changes and he connects those who go out and help the crowds, those who labor in the crowd, those who function as shepherds. He doesn't actually call them shepherds. He actually says those who go out into it, those who go out and help, function like laborers do in a harvest. They actually harvest a crop. And so there's these two images that Jesus is trying to get his followers to understand. Is he sees the crowd as a group of people like animals who need help. They need to be provided for. And then he says, pray that this harvest is plentiful, that laborers go out, and that God sends laborers to go out. So he attaches the crowd to sheep and the laborers as those who go out like farmers. They harvest. And I know Washington is known for its cherry, right? Cherry? Yeah, now that I say that, I'm like, right, it's cherries, right? And the apples, and they harvest them. They need people to go and harvest. In Iowa, where I spent about 7.5 years of my life, they harvest a different way with giant super tractors of awesomeness that are like the size of the church. Because you got to go big. And that's what they harvest with. It's really hard to do that. It's hard to harvest apples with that thing. You just hit a tree and be dead. And so you gotta have people. They harvest. They harvest the crop. The Lord, Jesus is like, it needs people to go into the harvest. Jesus sees the need. And so he prays. So he's directing his disciples, pray that God sends out laborers into a ready harvest. And what he's saying is this, so right now we have the sheep have a need. The sheep need protection. They're being harassed. They are helpless. But also, there's another need that Jesus is sort of implying here, that there is a need of harvest, that people want to change their mind on something and be drawn. They need to change their mind. And we find out later here in chapter 10 that he sends out his disciples to go and preach the good news of the kingdom, that Jesus Christ is there, that he is there and he's the answer, and that's it. And the harvest is ready. And Jesus is like, people out there are ready for a change. They're ready to prosper and to benefit. They're ready to be harvested. They're ready to be protected. And they need people to step in and are willing to do that for one another. So he's defined the need for us. He sees the need and he sees the promise. Now, an honest complaint that Christians get a lot of times is they will pray, but they won't do anything else. Have you guys heard of that? Like France, their terrorist attack. Suddenly the entire United States of America was praying. Okay? That's what we did. With the victims down in Florida, everybody prayed. Las Vegas, prayer. Victims in Texas, nothing. They made fun of everybody who prayed. I don't get that, but that's what happened. And what ends up playing out is we have this pray. And a lot of times Christians get a bad name because like, well, I'll pray for you. And somebody's like, well, hey, I need a ride to work. Can you provide it? No, I'll pray for you that you get a ride. Yeah, but aren't you just going to watch TV all day? Yeah, but I will pray that you go and can get a ride. And the guy's like, I'm pretty sure my prayer said, hey, drive me to work. Nope, I'm going to watch TV, but I will pray for you. That's oftentimes. And so what happens is this is not how we should view this. Because when we pray and hand this over, what we find is as Jesus prays and hands this need over to God and asks him to direct and work, what we actually see now is in chapter 10, verse 1. And he called to him his 12 disciples and gave them authority over unclean spirits to cast them out and to heal every disease and every affliction. So right after Jesus Christ said, pray that God would send people into the harvest, what do you find Jesus doing? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Go! He created a football team, +1. Sent them out. This is it. It's time to go. So as Jesus is praying and under God's leading, Jesus realized, yes, he's God, but he realized he can meet the need, and he started by sending 12 guys, and he gave them authority over some pretty cool stuff. Because remember, we've just finished talking about Jesus has all this authority over storms and demons, etc. Jesus hands this authority to these 12 guys and says, now you go do it. Hand off. It's time for you to go. It says the names of the 12 apostles are first Simon, who is called Peter, Andrew, James the son of Zebedee, John his brother, Philip, and Bartholomew. Thomas and Matthew, the tax collector. Hey, we know him, we're reading his book. James the son of Alphaeus and Thaddeus, Simon the Zealot, Judas Iscariot, he was naughty, who betrayed him. Yes, he even sent the guy who was going to betray him and gave him, the betrayer, the authority and power to cast out demons. Makes you think. It could be a whole sermon on another topic, but it's fascinating. It is. And then these 12, Jesus sent out instructing them. Go nowhere among the Gentiles and enter no town of the Samaritans, but go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And proclaim as you go, saying, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Heal the sick, raise the dead, cleanse lepers, cast out demons. And then you received without paying, give without pay, and that's sort of like the hinge into the next point. And so what Jesus does next is, so seeing the need, he called on messengers. He called a group of people, 12 disciples, to go on and do this. He had more disciples that were following him, but he chose these 12. And it wasn't because they were cooler than all the others. If you read the life of some of these disciples, you realize they didn't have a lot they could brag about. Matthew was a tax collector that wasn't bragging. That is literally saying, hi, I'm an extortionist. And I love Jesus. Sure you do. That was Matthew's reputation. Matthew flat out calls him Judas Iscariot, that betrayer who handled the money, who was known for one who just took a few cents on the side. They didn't have some of these guys didn't have amazing reputations. Peter was known as a hothead. Lost his temper sometimes, get really passionate, charge in there. And you have all these few. There's a really fun book. It's called 12 Ordinary Men. It's by John MacArthur. I have a copy of this book. I don't know where it is. I think I gave it to somebody. So if you have my copy of 12 Ordinary Men, please return it. But 12 Ordinary Men. And it's how the master shaped his disciples for greatness. It's by John MacArthur, and he brings, I don't agree with everything John MacArthur says, but in this sense, he brings together a lot, all the passages and sort of the historical tradition regarding the disciples and brings them in and helps you understand. And so I really encourage you. It's a really good book. It's a really good book for teenage boys. Hint, hint, parents, you should get your kids this book. It's a great book. All right, and really, it's cool how you can see yourself in some of these disciples as you read through it. It's really fascinating. So we can spend some time with the disciples, but we're not here this morning. But he calls out 12 guys. So he calls on these messengers to begin to meet this need. So he says, proclaim the kingdom of heaven, heal the sick, raise the dead, cleanse lepers, cast out demons. And so like I was saying before, he hands this ministry to Jesus, or Jesus hands this ministry to his disciples to act just like he has acted in the lives of other people. Teach and preach the kingdom and begin to heal and in essence verify what Jesus is saying. And so Jesus sends these guys out. When I was reading this, I was wondering, I'm like, what was Jesus doing there at this time? It's like, finally, some peace and quiet. Goes and sleeps a little bit, I don't know. And he says, go nowhere among the Gentiles and enter no town of the Samaritans, but go specifically to the house of Israel. Now, this isn't because Jesus had a problem with Gentiles or he had a problem with Samaritans. See, when Jesus looked at the crowd, he was very specific in who these 12 were supposed to go. I know a lot of times you'll hear these, like you're supposed to be like all things to all people. You've probably heard that. And I get the essence of a statement like that. We have to do our best to adapt to other people. But let me tell you, some people are gifted at reaching certain groups of people a lot better than other people are. When it comes to jocks, you know, the I work out all the time group of people. I have a hard time connecting with them because I just want to make fun of them. It is like this innate need deep down inside of me to just do it. Now, but what's funny is I played soccer and football with these guys, and so I was friends, but it was a hard time to connect. And some of you guys like, my pastor's so mean. I connect with certain groups better than others. Now, when you have like nerds, guys who play video games and goofy board games, I will connect with them faster than anybody. You know why? Because I am one. It's what you do. So we all connect with certain groups of people quicker and faster. Jewish people here were going to connect better with Jewish people. It wasn't anything against the Gentiles or the Samaritans. God had a plan for them. And we see that play out in the book of Acts. He sent this Jewish guy named Paul, who completely pretty much set the Gentile world on fire for Christianity. It was awesome. He was set up that way. Some of these other guys aren't. It's okay. That doesn't mean you're mean or you make fun of them. Like I shouldn't make fun of jocks because they can beat me up. Because they're strong. They work out and stuff. And just mean. I shouldn't do that. But the fact is, there's nothing anything weird about this. Like Jesus hates this group of people. No, he's focusing these 12 group of people to a very specific group of people where he saw that the people of Israel were lost and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. And that's where he sent them. And this is this next point, okay? To minister from grace. He says in verse 9, or let's read the end of verse 8 and then keep going. You received without paying, give without pay. Acquire no gold or silver or copper from your belts, no bag for your journey, or 2 tunics, or sandals, or a staff where the laborer deserves his food. And whatever town or village you enter, find out who is worthy in it, and stay there until you depart. As you enter the house, greet it. And if the house is worthy, let your peace come upon it. But if it is not worthy, let your peace return to you. And so we get this explanation of how Jesus expected these 12 guys to minister and to proclaim the kingdom. They weren't to get paid. This isn't because he didn't believe in paying and helping. Because he says in the end of verse 10, for the laborer deserves his food. Jesus recognizes those who labor diligently are supposed to get food because you sort of need it to eat. But Jesus says it's a little different for you 12. If we think about it, how was Jesus' ministry defined? Did he have a house that he lived in? Not really. It never really seems that he had a house. It's not like he went to his house. He was always going to somebody else's house. He lived in some ways like a wandering, traveling, homeless man. He has nowhere to lay his head. And so he's asking his 12 disciples, I need you guys to do the same thing. And he's not saying every Christian servant follower has to do it. No, he's like, he wants zero distractions. He doesn't want his disciples to go and act in one way, and Jesus was acting in a certain way, where people could look at it and say, well, you guys are just in it for the money. See, this way, no, they're not. I mean, they got to eat, because if you don't, you die. But other than that, there's not it. And so he gives this guidelines. He says, don't bring any gold. Don't take gold or silver or copper. Don't put them in your belts. He's like, you don't need a bag for your journey. He says you don't even need 2 tunics, okay? You don't need to bring 2 sets of clothing. Yeah, that's gross. Or 2 pairs of sandals. Or a staff. You literally are going just what you have on. It's one of those like, Jesus commissioned these guys like, can I go pack? And Jesus is like, no, and you're off. See, we're going to Snow Blast. All these kids are bringing luggage, more luggage, sleeping bag, blankets, luggage. That's how we roll. It's not how Jesus rolled. He's like, and go. Right now, you're off. And because, if you guys notice that in verse 8, you received without paying, now you are to give without pay. And Jesus is helping them think from a mindset of grace. You got without earning. Now you give without earning. Isn't that really cool? He says, you received without paying. You have received blessing and God's grace and God's work. Now I want you to give without the expectation of pay. And so he says, if the house is worthy. So as you enter a house, greet it. Now back in those days, they didn't have a lot of hotels. They didn't have a Holiday Inn or Motel 6 or Motel 8 or every other single La Quinta and all the other ones that I can't even, there's a ton of them. They didn't have those back then. You literally walked into town and you're like, hey, you look nice. Do you have a place in your garage for me to sleep tonight? The answer was yes. Or get lost. This is it. And so you walk into the town and you usually get there in the morning and you start sharing the good news of Jesus and you're impacting and you're healing and you're serving and people come up and say, hey, do you have any place to stay tonight? Because I know you're traveling. And they'd be like, well, no, I don't. They're like, well, have us. We'd love to have you while you stay here in town. And so they would come and in essence live underneath their house. So you have their house, and then you have the garage where they had their animals and stuff like that. It's like our garage, okay? And they would go and say, you guys sleep there, and they go and they would feed them and take care of them for the few days, and then they were off on their way to the next town. Could you imagine doing that nowadays? We're like, man, people are weird. It's not like that's changed. They were weird back then too. That's just what they did. That's why they had stuff them in the garage with the donkeys. They were there. And they go to the hut. And so, all right. And so he says, as you enter the house, greet it. And if the house is worthy, stay there. Plan on staying there. But if it is not worthy, just say, hey, you guys are weird. We're leaving. And go about your way. And so that's how Jesus shaped his ministry. Don't bring anything with you. Minister and serve from grace. You got something and for free. Now give it to others for free. Serve and minister the grace of God to people. They were to minister from grace. Now this is where things get fascinating because remember, people are weird. Verse 14 says, and if anyone will not receive you, or listen to your words, shake off the dust from your feet when you leave that house or town. That is image of That is an idea from when a Jewish person traveled into Gentile land. The idea was just by walking on the ground, you've probably made yourself unclean. So they would come into Israel and they would shake the dust off as a symbol of, all right, I'm back in Holy Land now. Would go and do the thing. That was the idea there. Now, this doesn't mean Jesus is thinking less of them. That was just an idea. And so what he says is as you guys come, so as you go into town and you're trying to minister, some towns are going to completely reject you. Yes, you healed somebody. Yes, you did there. But they're going to reject you and your message, and they're not even going to listen to you. And when that happens, don't cry about it. Don't feel all sad and feel that you rejected and you're a stinky disciple. No, it's going to happen. Dust the dust off your feet and go to the next town. He says, truly I say to you, it will be more bearable on the day of judgment for the land of Sodom and Gomorrah than for that town. If you guys know the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, that town was completely obliterated by hellfire and brimstone. Pretty much, I'm pretty sure the Dead Sea is a result of the damage that God did to Sodom and Gomorrah. Just smashed it, leveled it. It just became And he says it would be more bearable for Sodom and Gomorrah than that town that rejects you. And we can, and it's because they are rejecting the actual person and ministry of the Messiah. It's like Jesus is standing right there. You can't get any closer to Jesus and to deity and to what God is doing. And by their rejection, it's actually worse than what Sodom and Gomorrah and what they were known for and their rebellion against God. This is even worse. He says, behold, I am sending you as sheep in the midst of wolves, so be wise as servants and innocent as doves. So you are outgunned, you are prey, you are innocent, and you are entering a dangerous battlefield. We play this game as our youth plays this game called Bear, and I don't know why they like it. I guess. So pretty much what happens is we turn off all the lights in the church. And somebody goes, so we start off in, the kitchen, and one person goes and hides somewhere. And we have to go look for him or her. And when one of us sees that person, we have to yell, bear, and then everybody runs back as fast as they can to base, chair. The game is dangerous. You can ask Seth. Seth had an accident there. Mm-hmm. Yep, I remember Seth. Yep. You can usually get Magenta to start laughing really hard during the game, and so you know where the bear is. You just are like, hi, Magenta. She's like, hee, 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 hee. And you know where she is, okay? And so she's a bad bear. I love being bear because I love hiding and, I don't care about tagging. I just want to scare as many kids as I possibly can. So I like the game, okay? So there's two approaches to playing bear. You have the brave, I'm faster than everybody approach, which Lathan takes. He confidently walks down the hallway. Usually if he walks past you, you can capture him. And then you have the Elizabeth approach. I don't think she ever leaves base. No, she just hides there, okay? And this is really the challenge that we have and that these disciples have in the mission field is it is dangerous. And you know it's dangerous, and Jesus is still asking you to go. And so he gives a guideline. He says, I want you to be wise as serpents and innocent as doves. I want you to walk wisely in the midst of this dangerous battlefield. Don't act clueless. So he says, first, he's like, you are sheep in the midst of wolves. That screams to us that this is a dangerous place. And the first thing he says, so as a result of it being dangerous, I want you to be as wise as serpents. This is where it's like every week, some pastor has gotten on a news media station, and their whole goal of being there, I guess, is to defend Donald Trump. Now, I'm not even going to go into your politics, okay? But what I'm saying is that is not a wise battlefield to walk into. Can you, as a Christian, honestly defend every single one of the tweets that Donald Trump posts? Say it, people. No, okay? Why would you walk into that knowing full well what's going to happen to you? That is unwise. That is a poor choice. It's the same thing that happens as Christians. As we minister, there are certain conversations that we just shouldn't get into. And it's not because we're scared. It's not because we don't have the answer. It's not because, well, share this if you love Jesus, and if you don't share it, then you must hate Jesus. No, wow, no. Just stay out of it, because it's not smart. So many Christians are like, I'm going to follow Jesus. They just charge out there, and they wonder why they just get destroyed. Yeah, it's because you are a sheep in the midst of wolves. Duh! You're gonna get destroyed. Jesus doesn't say you as a sheep will be invincible in the midst of the wolves. Nothing bad will ever happen to you. No. He's like, they're wolves. They're gonna eat you. Don't do that. Disciples, there's some people who are gonna reject you. Don't because you are right, let them have it. You kidding me? The last thing you want to do is be alone in groups of two in the middle of a town, starting war with a whole town. Because things will happen to you. Oh, I haven't seen Matthew here. Oh, no. Threw him in a ditch back there because they got rid of him. Who's going to say otherwise? It's dangerous. Be smart, people. That's what Jesus is telling his disciples. Smart. Be as wise as serpents. Serpents oftentimes don't slither right in front of you and act like everything is cool. Oh, he'll stop. Nope. They are very wise. They're very smart. And if you guys know rattlesnakes, they actually coil up and back up. You know what? They even warn you. They don't want to bite you. They don't want to even mess with you. They're wise. They're smart. They're sneaky. And so as servants of God, we need to be wise. But if we didn't have this last phrase, and innocent as doves, we would function like many Christians do today, and we're as wise and as mean as serpents, Tack back, let them have it. Stinking pagans don't believe in Jesus. I'm going to let them have it. So we do. And Jesus is like, no, I want you guys to be as wise as a snake, but not aggressive as a snake. I want you to be what? Innocent as a dove. Aw. He could have said bunny and would have got the idea. Innocent as a bunny. Oh, just so cute. You just want to hold it and pet it. And, oh. That's how it is. What a way to describe. Jesus is saying, I want you to be as smart as a snake, but not as violent as one, not as aggressive as one, not one who's looking and seeking prey. No, I want you to be as innocent as a dove. I'm pretty sure a dove could poop on your car, and you'd be like, that was cute. That was just so nice. Because they just have that way about them. Aw, like bird. It's just so cute looking. They're so white and nice, and a dove is a symbol of peace. And you just feel nice. So that's what Jesus is saying. You guys are walking into a dangerous battleground. Use your brain. And be gentle and nice. And when people think about you, your goal is to have them think you are a dove, not as a snake. But then really secretly, you are as smart as a snake. because you are acting like a dove. See how this all works, okay? That's our goal. Okay, Jesus is like, I need you guys to do this. We have to use our brains. We have to realize that we're in a dangerous battlefield and be wise as serpents and innocent as doves. And so, seeing the need, he called on messengers to minister from grace and enter a dangerous battleground. And our last point is for the sake of a sheep. See, we touched on this throughout the sermon, but it's worth emphasizing. Jesus had compassion for those with a need. He had compassion. So, back up in like verses 5, 6, and 7, he says, these 12, Jesus went out instructing them, go nowhere among the Gentiles and enter no town of the Samaritans, but go to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Go to them first. And so I was sort of thinking about trying to bring everything together in my own mind. And so what I'm going to explain here is more like a logic step, not necessarily a textual one based on the text, but it is still biblical. You'll see, okay? And so Jesus, as we've seen so far in the book of Matthew, Jesus is identified. He's deity. He is God. All right? He is God. Now, if we hold this viewpoint that Jesus is God, that he is equal to the Father and the Spirit, and he functions like that, that means that Jesus chose Abraham. And in essence, Jesus created the house, the sheep of Israel. They are his sheep. Jesus has preserved them for this time for over 1,400 years, even more, as a people. And it's amazing that the nation of Israel is still around today. It is. Even with U.S. help, it's still an amazement. God has been preserving his people. And Jesus realizes, as we've talked about, that they are lost and they have been rejecting him. He is their shepherd. They're acting like they don't have one. So he's trying to draw the sheep to himself. That I am the shepherd. I am the hope. I am the peace. And he sends out the 12 people to minister from grace and once again point back at Jesus. He's trying to meet their need. See, there is a connection specifically between the nation of Israel and him. Not that there isn't a connection between the Gentiles and God, but there is a special covenant, chosen relationship. God has chosen the people of Israel to love and to minister to and to treat in a very, very, very special way. Doesn't mean he hates anybody else. He loves mankind, but he has chosen to work very specifically with this group of people. There is a deep connection, and God, and he knows this, and they are his sheep. I think this is critical because I think this actually drives in some ways Jesus' compassion with them. There's this special connection. Yes, he's man, and yet yes, he is God, and he loves all mankind, but they are his people, and they are his sheep, and he loves them. And he wants his sheep to have freedom from sin and to rest in him and to be drawn into Jesus' kingdom of freedom and hope and peace. And he's trying to draw his sheep and he's trying to bring the herd back to himself. See, this is the definition of compassion. It's not just I feel guilty that these people are in need. I feel guilty about these animals that are mistreated. No, it actually is there's something different where Jesus had compassion and it drove him to act. It drove him to move. The compassion was love. And he asked 12 men to go and reach. It says, in seeing the need, he called on messengers to live free of distraction and enter a dangerous battleground for the sake of his sheep. And this is our Jesus. The church started with these 12 men. 11. Cross out Judas. Yeah. Their work taught other men and women and brought other sheep into the fold, and you became this organization called the church that's been around now for 2,000 years. That is insane in itself. Who comes in and sits down and listens to a guy talk about the Bible every week? It's different. It's great, but we're drawn to it. God is working and shaping the church. And it all started because of the 12, the 12 that he called. And then they went and they trained, and they went and they trained. You are the beneficiary of somebody who invested the grace of God in your life. Not a single one of us came to God completely by ourselves without another person. Didn't happen. You can't. God used people, whether or not you even realized it. God used people in your life to show ministry. I'm the beneficiary of one. And I've had a wonderful privilege of being able to minister and invest in your life. And I think as we think about this, we can praise God that God used messengers in our life. And thankfully, some of them ministered from grace. And that they entered the dangerous battleground of our own lives. Because we're not perfect. Our lives are messy. You got to be sort of insane to get involved in another person's life. It's a dangerous battleground. And so, but they did, and they invested, and they shared. Even when you were 5. 5-year-olds, they're a little messy. They yell and scream and throw fits everywhere. And they poop on themselves and all sorts of crazy things. It's a dangerous place. Just come to my house. Okay? And we know it's a dangerous place. So it's not just because you're 5 or 8 or 10 or a high school student. It's dangerous. But God is allowing people to minister in your life. And so we can praise God that people worked in our life. But I think we can remember and we can ask ourselves, are we good messengers for Jesus? Are we as wise as serpents? Are we as gentle and innocent as doves are? Do we minister from grace with no expectations on people? And so I think we can praise God this morning for the work of messengers on our behalf. And then we can strive this week to be better messengers of the grace of God.